they're going to click live now, so I'll tell you if it works. We're live now, everyone, so you can start the meeting, Councillor Raby.
Thank you, Chelsea. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular December meeting of Mansfield Shire Council. I'd like to apologise. We have had some unforeseen technical difficulties, so I'm glad that we're on now. I'd like to thank all the councillors and council officers and members of the public that may be out there watching this evening. So I'll open the meeting and ask each councillor if they can confirm verbally that they can see all councillors and hear council proceedings. Councillor Holcomb.
Mr Mayor, I can see all councillors and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Sladden.
I can see all councillors and councillor officers and can hear the proceedings.
And Councillor Tian.
I too can see all councillors, council officers, and I can hear them.
Okay, I'll ask each councillor to confirm by raising their hand that they could hear each statement from each other councillor. Thank you. I have an apology tonight from Councillor Webb, who cannot be with us due to illness. Madam CEO, have you got any apologies?
No other apologies, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thanks very much. I'll read this statement of commitment and ask each councillor to confirm their commitment. As councillors of Mansfield Shire, we are committed to ensuring our behaviour meets the standards set by the Mansfield Shire Councillor Code of Conduct and Councillor Charter. We will, at all times, faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in us by the community. Councillor Holcomb.
Confirm my commitment.
Councillor Sladden.
I confirm my commitment, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Tian.
I confirm my commitment.
Thank you. I'll ask the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Holcomb, to recite the acknowledgement of country, please.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Our meeting is being held on the lands of the Tundra people, and we wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. We'd also like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Item 6 is the disclosure of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have any conflict of interest on any agenda item tonight? Councillor Holcomb.
No conflicts, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Sladden.
No conflicts, Mr Mayor.
And Councillor Tian.
I have no conflict of interest on any of the agenda items tonight.
Thank you. And for the record, I have no conflict of interest either. The confirmation of minutes item 7 is a recommendation before you. That can I have a motion, please? Councillor Holcomb.
Mr Mayor, the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meeting held on the 20th of November 2023 and the 5th of December 2023 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Tian. Councillor Holcomb, do you want to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Tian.
No.
Anyone want to speak to or for against the motion? I'll put the motion to a vote. All in favour of the motion, raise your hand. Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 8 on the agenda are representations. Representations tonight. I have representations for item 13.2.1. There will be representations for the Little Aths and also the Delta Cricket Club.
Through you, Mr Mayor,
yes.
We have received a late apology for the Little Aths, apparently.
Oh, have we? Okay. Thanks very much. So Alison Howley is an apology for Little Athletics. So it'll be thanks very much.
Just received.
No notices of motion. The Mayor's report is before you all, and take that as read. Has anyone got a motion? Thanks, Councillor Holcomb.
Mr. Mayor, the council received the Mayor's report for the period 29th of November 2023 to 6th of December 2023.
Thank you. And I'll get a seconder for the motion. Councillor Sladden. And all those in favour of the motion.
Oh, can I comment, Mr. Mayor?
If you must, Councillor
I
Sladden.
must, Mr. Mayor. First of my apologies for not attending the November meeting at which you were elected, but I would like to congratulate you on your appointment, and I'd also like to acknowledge the staff in, as highlighted in your report, that we will revert to hybrid meetings in 2024. So thank you to Madam CEO and the IT staff for facilitating that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Sladden. Thanks for your wishes. Is an honour and a privilege to be the Mayor. So could I have a vote on the motion, please? All those in favour? Motion is carried. Yep. So item 11 is the reports from council appointed representatives. The Australia Awards Committee met, and that's already been reported on at our last meeting. The Mansfield CEO Employment Matters Committee has not met since the last time. Goulburn Murray Climate Alliance, I have nothing from Councillor Webb on that one. The Hume Regional Local Government Network hasn't met yet. The Mansfield Shire Council Ordinance Risk Committee, Mark, that hasn't met yet, has it?
Yes, we've spoken at the previous meeting about the last meeting of the Audit Risk Committee, but I would like to add that since then, the final accounts, financial accounts have now been signed off by VAGO after a very protracted signing off period. So it's a great relief to everyone involved that it's finally happened. And that wasn't our council's doing.
Yeah, noted. Thanks for that, Councillor Holcomb.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a meeting of the Hume Local Government Network. That was the meeting we attended in Benalla at the Benalla Bowls Club.
It was too.
Sorry, I thought you might.
Overwhelmed by it. Yep. Okay. So basically, I was there. There were all the newly elected mayors were there, and we put forward our views of what were the most important outcomes, I suppose, to take to government. I think the resignation from most of them was the planning problems that we face with the state government at the moment. Affordable housing was one, but it wasn't that as high on the agenda by my recollection. And there were, Madam CEO, you'll have to help me out because you were there as well, and you attended the CEO's conference along with the mayors and CEOs. There were 4 items on that list, I remember, and I can't remember the ones you were attending.
Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was also advocacy. I think advocacy was very high on the agenda, in particular for road funding and an improved road condition as well. And I think you covered off the other 2. That was planning and I'm just. There was also an excellent presentation in relation to the the funding that's coming out for affordable housing. That's probably that. I think that's probably enough of a summary for this meeting. But yeah, more to come.
Affordable
Thanks.
housing, Madam CEO, or worker housing?
Well, it's actually we just had a workshop for key worker housing, but and it is focused on that. Yes, you're right. It is key worker housing, but there was also a lot of discussion about housing affordability and growth at the regional local government network as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten, for that, Madam CEO. The rural councils, the MAV has not met since the last report, and the rural councils of Victoria has not met yet. So the motion before us, councillors. Councillor Holcomb.
Mayor, the council note the verbal reports provided by councillors in relation to their representation on external committees.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Slatton. And does anyone want to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion to vote. All in favour of the motion? And the motion is carried. Thank you. 12, item 12, we have public question time. Have we got any questions for the public, Madam CEO?
And no questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much. Item 13, officer reports. 13.1 is the Chief Executive Officer's report. Responsible officer, the Chief Executive Officer, Kirsten Alexander. Have we got any questions, councillors? No questions? Thanks very much. All right, there's a recommendation before you. If we call Councillor Slatton.
The recommendation is the council receive and note the Chief Executive Officer's report for the period 29 November 2023 to 6 December 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Slatton. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Tehan. And I'll put that motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we are next on the agenda is item 13.2.1, which is Infrastructure and Planning Directorate, 32 Chenery Street, Mansfield. I believe we will have 5 deputations for this. And the responsible officer is Coordinator Statutory Planning, Ms. Nicole Imbling. Are you with us, Nicole?
Nicole is just joining now.
She's joining, yeah. Hi, Nicole. Welcome to the December meeting.
Good evening. Thank you.
And hi, everyone waiting in the waiting room, our deputies. Welcome to our meeting tonight. I'll just set the ground rules so you all know. Each person will get to say their points, and that will take 3 minutes. I will time you. You may have questions from councillors, or there may not be questions for councillors after that. And we'll do it in order of my list here. First one will be Anthony Carroll, then Mary Carroll, John Bugden, Beryl Jolly, and Neville Keatley. And there's one more, is there? Is that correct?
There was Duncan Taylor. Mayor
And
Arby.
Duncan Taylor. Yeah, sorry, Duncan, you're not on my sheet, but I think you came in late. But I'll put you on there. Okay, so we have deputations, councillors, this proposal's before you, and I know you've all had time to read that. So I'll start off with Anthony Carroll. Welcome to our meeting, Anthony. And I'd like to get you to present your deputation to us, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'll be reading from a prepared statement.
Okay, go. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak here today. Yesterday, Monday, my sister Mary and I were afforded, as requested, an on-site meeting at 28A Ailsa Street, Mansfield. In attendance were 2 representatives from the Planning Department team and 3 members of Council present here today, to which we are grateful. I noted upon our introductions that each of the 5 council representatives, independently of each other, made comment as to how attractive and pleasant an area we have here. Unfortunately, despite their kind words, I am concerned that such a pleasant amenity will be significantly compromised given the overall size, design and nature of the proposed development to 32 Chenery Street, Mansfield, which adjoins our property, should this development proceed in its current form. I do understand the proposed development, according to the Planning Department, does meet the relevant criteria from a planning construction perspective. If I could outline some of my concerns in more detail. An approximately 12 metre by 12 metre by 6 metre high box-like structure with a hip and gable roof extending the overall height to 7.7 metres. This proposed design provides no setback to the second level. In fact, the second level actually protrudes past the first level and is larger in floor area. With regard to aesthetics and any appealing feature in relation to the design, I'm unable to find any aspect of this design that you would find complimentary. It is large in its size as the block is only approximately 16 metres in width and dominates the area both within and outside of 32 Chenery Street, Mansfield. Given its overall size, it just doesn't fit comfortably with the immediate area. Could a compromise be to give consideration to the removal of the second story of the proposed new structure, therefore maintaining such a desirable location as to where we live? I am not at all anti-development. In fact, Mary and I have a current planning permit for 3 standalone single-storey units at 28 Ailsa Street. Upon making application for the permit, we were in regular discussion with our neighbours, ensuring them that the development will only be of single story and would not impact on their amenity. I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that extensive draining works have been undertaken within our property at 28 Ailsa Street, and it is not vacant land as such, but an occupied and utilised area that we enjoy on a daily basis. For the record, I do maintain my objection to the proposed development in its current form at 32 Chenery Street, Mansfield. In closing, thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you today to be able to voice my concerns regarding the proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Has any councillors got any questions for Mr. Carroll? Thank you, Mr. Carroll, for putting your deputation to us tonight. There are no more questions for you. And I'll ask the next person, which is Mary Carroll, to present your deputation to council. Please, Mary. Good evening, Mary, and thanks for coming along.
Good evening, Councillor Raby. Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak. As a born and bred Mansfield resident and an adjoining landholder to 32 Chenery Street, Mansfield, I steadfastly object to the proposed construction of a 2-storey building at this residential address. I understand that the Planning Department is regulated by the Victorian State Government. However, in our Mansfield planning scheme, it states that within general residential zones, the Shire is to encourage development that respects the neighbourhood character of the area. The proposed development of 32 Chinnery Street does not respect our general neighbourhood character in any conceivable way. My grounds for objection are total loss of character of the neighbourhood and in particular my backyard and garden. Loss of privacy. Occupants on the balcony on the east side of this building will have full view into my backyard and garden. Excessive noise that we already endure from this site. Overshadowing onto our land. Unsafe parking conditions that will lead to restriction of traffic flow along Chinnery Street. The Rubik's Cube layout of the parking on this site, along with the school crossing 4 house lots south, I believe poses a major safety concern as occupants of the development enter and leave the site. That is, if they park in allocated spaces. Most, I believe, will park on the street, therefore obstructing the view of surrounding residents trying to enter the carriageway. If a major accident occurs that is directly related to this site, will Mansfield Council, in allowing this development to go ahead, accept any responsibility? The proposed building is not dissimilar to 20 20-foot shipping containers, arranged 5 wide, 2 deep and 2 high. The proposed claddings and structural materials as described on the plan TP11B do not have enough detail. More specific details are needed. This building presents a total overdevelopment of the site. The proposed development site, size, scale and density do not align with the established character of the neighbourhood, potentially leading to negative impacts on amenity, traffic and infrastructure. There is minimal garden, open space and vegetation proposed for the site. It will be an ugly box overtaking the skyline of neighbouring properties and having a detrimental impact on our day-to-day lives. Developments of this nature will cause a general downgrading of the quality of life we have here in Mansfield. Thank you all for your work, commitment and consideration to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll, for that, for your deputation. Councillors, have you got any questions for Ms. Carroll? Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mrs. Carroll, you and your husband have both mentioned of your plans to develop 3 units. Is that correct? On vacant land in the same street. How can you guarantee that that's going to be within the neighbourhood character of the street?
Our plans have already been passed through the Shire and all the drawings and everything have been done. The landscaping plan has been done and it's all single story. It is a standing application. And we actually even have a covenant on the property so that if something happened that we weren't to develop it, it will remain single story. It's not to go 2-story.
Thank you very much for your response.
Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb, you have a question?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Carroll, just with respect to why it doesn't fit into the neighbourhood area, is your major concern the fact that it's just 2-story? Or is it go further than that?
Yes. The fact that it is it's such a large building and it is obtrusive to everyone in the neighbourhood. Yes, the 2nd story on the building is my major concern.
Is that there's another 2-story building not far from you. It's on the neighbourhood. Why is this any different?
I'm assuming you're referring to the one on the corner of Chinnery and Hunter Streets, which is 3 units.
Yes, I am.
That particular development, the upper story of those units have a setback. On the north side, there are smaller windows that are all frosted windows. And on the south side and the west side, they overlook the street. They don't overlook other properties. And then on the actual east side, we own that property there, and there's no windows there looking down into the property. So there's large trees, there's quite an extensive garden around those units, quite a large garden area, and they are not seen to be intrusive on neighbourhood, onto the direct neighbours.
So we should take that argument further, Ms. Carroll. If there was no windows or balcony on that side facing east, would that meet your objections?
Not really, because I don't want to then impose it onto my other neighbours. I just think this development should take our whole neighbourhood into consideration. To me, it is a development that should not be in a residential area of Mansfield. It doesn't belong in the neighbourhood.
Thank you.
If there was no balcony, that would make a very big difference. But, I mean, there has to be windows, because there has to be windows to let light in. So I just think the two-storey has to go. Well, the second story has to go.
Thanks, Ms. Carroll.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Sladden, you have another question.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mrs. Carroll, did you attend the consultative meeting on the 9th of October?
Yes, I did.
And you put those views forward at that meeting?
Yes, they may have been worded differently, but all of the views that I have spoken of here today were spoken of at that meeting also.
And what was the response from the proponent?
From the who, sorry?
The proponent, the people who want to
Well,
construct this.
the main response was that all the objectives were within the State Government Planning Act, and that all requirements were met, and that we didn't own a view. I understand we don't own a view, and that basically just that all the requirements requested by the state government or needed by the state government had been met. But my argument is that as I said, under the Mansfield planning scheme, it states that within general residential zone, the Shire is encouraged to development that respects our lifestyles. And I don't think that this development is respecting our lifestyles.
So at that meeting on the 9th of October, were any concessions made by the developer?
Yes, there were concessions regarding the overlooking. They were going to put some screening shutters, whatever we want to call them, around some windows. They also put a fence, for want of a better description, along the balcony, and they've put some sills out to obscure the property, but we have since been told that these are not mandatory, so that is also a concern. Are they going to be built? They also, the one on the balcony won't obscure, it obscures a certain amount of view, but if you stand either end of it, you can still see across into neighbouring, a neighbour's back porch and into her house. I mean, the distance is right, but the view is still there. We can all see further than 9 metres.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mrs.
Thank
Carroll.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillors, have I got any more questions for Ms. Carroll? In that case, Ms. Carroll, thanks very much for your deputation tonight.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you all.
I'll call on Mr. John Bugden to... Hi there, Mr. Bugden. My name's Steve Raby, the Mayor. Your deputation tonight should consist of no more than 3 minutes. So I'll be timing you. You can
Thank
go
you.
anytime.
First of all, hello to everybody and congratulations on your appointments. Firstly, I'm not against subdivision per se, but in this case I am. I've got the property next door and I look at it and I think it's such a big building on such a small footprint, and it's what's going to go on within there so that the cars up and down the driveway. We're proposing, there's a proposal for 5 car spaces, basically around a turning circle. There's no backyards to the building other than a 2 metre gap between the building and the fence. And I'm concerned a little bit about what it's being aimed at, who it's being aimed at. It's you wouldn't put a young family in there because they've got nowhere to play. There's also the moving traffic. And it's not for old people because stairs. The mere fact that the building has a common laundry or communal laundry starts to cast doubts for me that it's to be 2 separate entities. And really it is just one building that's got a divider in it from my perspective there. And excuse me a sec while I double check my notes. Yeah, so we're at that point. I don't understand why it needs to be 2-storey. If it was 1-storey, I probably wouldn't be objecting to it. But with 2-storey, I get the imposing people or view into my backyard. And it basically opens up the whole backyard. Like Ms. Carroll said, the barriers or the reflectors on the windows, I don't think are going to be much of a deterrent from that perspective. There's the concern of car movement, as I've said that, the noise of the cars, the tenants. And if you look coming in and out, and the number of tenants is a concern. You look at what all up, there's going to be something like about 10 bedrooms. Is that for one person in each bedroom? Is it a bordering type thing, a short-term stay, those types of things? So it's more like the Alberg than what I think would be a normal style of building for people to live in. There's also an issue with water runoff as it exists now into my place, and with either concrete or gravel driveway, that would only be exacerbated, and I'd like to think that that's not going to happen. I've got down here boarding style accommodation. So yeah, that's it at the moment. Again, like has been said, it's a residential zone, and this to me looks more like a business operation of a boarding house.
Can I stop you there? Sorry, Mr. Bugden, you've just gone over 3 minutes, so.
I won. That's all right.
Yeah. Councillors, have we got any questions for Mr. Bugden? Councillor Holcomb?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bugden, just with respect to you alluding to the fact that with more tenants than what you think there's going to be and how it's going to be used, and you mentioned the Alesburg, are you referring there to, I assume you're referring there to Airbnb, is that what you're concerned about?
Well, that's part of it, although I understand that with the number of residents there, it can't operate as an Airbnb. But even then, how can it be guaranteed that it won't be? And given the fact that when it's being advertised currently, it's being advertised with up to sleeping room for 19 people. It does say 15 on websites, but if you add up the number of sleeping spots and beds, there's 19 beds in there already that's being used. And there has been one situation where 18 people stayed there. And that was on the website as one of the comments made by the people that stayed, and a bit of an argument between them and the owner over the way things were done between the two. And I think they pulled the wool over the owner's eyes, actually. So that there. So yes, and the noise is just, although that hasn't been used recently, as in last few weeks, the tenant in my place is regularly letting Callum know that the noise level is loud, and he, to his credit, he does act upon it and the noise gets cut down, but it's week in, week out almost. And it's one of those things that shouldn't be happening. And as I'm saying, with 10 bedrooms, there's possibility of 10 different people minimum in there, all making noise. So there is that concern there, as well as the view into the adjoining properties.
Thank you.
Councillor Sladen had a question.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Bugden, good evening. Firstly, can I just clarify, do you live in that property next door, or is that a rental of yours?
Well, I was living there while I was working in Mansfield, but I've changed jobs and I'm now out of the area, and I have a tenant in there as a rental property. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. My second question is, have you read the officer's report?
Which one?
In the agenda tonight, the officer's report in the agenda tonight.
No, I haven't.
Okay. The officer's report does refer to the water flow that you mentioned earlier, which clearly states that the plumbing, the outflow is sufficient to handle the amount of water flowing from the property. And secondly, the officer's report does refer to what you are alluding to as in group accommodation. If this was to become group accommodation, then the applicant would need to apply for a planning permit to ensure that it was group accommodation. Now, they haven't applied for such a permit. The permit application is as stands, so there's no indication as to what it may be in the future. So when we come to make a decision, we've got to assess it on what is now, not what may be in the future. You understand that?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Bugden.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Bugden. And Councillor Sladen, have we got any other questions? No questions. In that case, thank you for attending, Mr. Bugden, and I'll call on the next person on my list, which is Mrs. Beryl Jolly. Mrs. Jolly, good evening to you, and thank you for coming along tonight virtually and giving your deputation. You'll have 3 minutes to talk, and then you may have questions from councillors. So over to you.
Thanks, Mayor Raby, and thanks, councillors, for listening to us. I'm not as eloquent as some of the other people that have spoke tonight, so I'll just say what I'm going to say. You've read my objections, you've been to my home, so you know my issues, but I just want to say this. My indoor and outdoor private areas will be totally invaded 24/7. I'll need to have the glass doors leading out onto my deck always covered. That is not okay. The amount of people allowed to be at 32 Chenry Street, there's going to be a massive security, noise and safety issue. This huge ugly building, and I'm sorry I'm saying that, but it is, it blocks my view, and also during these doors leading to my outside deck will totally, well not totally, but will invade the natural light coming into my lounge room. This is a disabled home, built as a disabled home, so these areas are needed. This building doesn't sit in our neighbourhood. It just is not right for our neighbourhood. It's huge, it's massive. And not only that, it's placed about 20 metres away from my home. So it's really, the implications of this building on me is very, very intrusive and really scary to me, let me say. 32 Chenery Street's a local neighbourhood and residential neighbourhood, and this area is just being totally overdeveloped, and it just feels like a motel instead of a residential area, which this area is. I think that's about all I have to say. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mrs. Jolly, for coming in and giving us your deputation. Councillors, have you got any questions for Mrs. Jolly? Councillor Tian.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Mrs. Jolly. How long have you lived on the site for there?
48 years.
48 years, yeah. And you've obviously enjoyed that backyard a lot over the years.
I built this home here 17 years ago. When we moved here, we lived up on the front, fronting Hunter Street, and we're down near the back. My husband was very ill, and we had to move out of that house and build a new house because of his health conditions. But he passed away before I built this home, so this is why the home was built down here.
Yeah, I'm just interested in the building, and obviously the design is not with your liking. But if that balcony was obviously that's the point of concern that you have, I imagine, is where the balcony is situated and the view from that balcony. If that was able to be changed to some extent, would that be favourable for you?
It's not only the balcony, it's the massive size of that building. I walk out, I can see that building, and it blocks a major part of my view. It's very big. We all would like to live in privacy and have something around us that we can walk in and out of our back doors with privacy, and something that's not going to be massively. From where I am, I'm looking at the corner of that building, but that balcony looks totally into my living room and all over my backyard and all over my back deck. So
Thanks
no,
very much.
I don't want the top story on that building. I know there's development going to happen around me. I know that's what's happening, and that's where we are, and that's what the life we're living. But not a two-story dwelling in this area, not in this neighbourhood, not where it's doing. No. If it's low level, I have no issues.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Toon. Any other questions, councillors? No other questions. Thank you, Mrs. Jolly, for coming along for your deputation tonight. And we'll move on to Mr. Neville Keatley. Are you with us?
I hope so.
Oh, hi, Mr. Keatley. Thanks for coming along. As you know, there'll be 3 minutes, and then we may ask you questions after that. So if you can start now, please.
Okay. To the chair, councillors and council officials, thanks for the opportunity to outline our opposition to the proposed planning application. I'm afraid I'm going to read my objection as it's make it clearer. As an objector to this planning application, I understand that the proposed design has been modified in the effort to conform to the planning requirements. In fact, it is those modifications which contribute strongly to the very unusual appearance and greatly add to our overall concerns. The proposed construction is positioned in the centre of and overlooks a number of adjacent private backyards to the north, east and the west. In attempting to reduce the loss of privacy in these overlooked backyards, the design includes the fitting of sight screens extending from the base, the sides and the top of all normal height second-story windows, with similar screening to the base and sides of the east-facing balcony. Each window has a four-sided open-ended box extending 1.2 metres out from the wall. That's each window. The second-story kitchen window is of particular concern to my wife and myself, as it overlooks our rear garden and deck next door at 34 Chenery Street. The neighbours to the north at 30 Chenery Street are similarly affected given the central position of this window. As the drawing TP16 clearly shows, the window's lateral view boundary extends to the left, which is southwards, and encompasses the majority of our rear garden and the entirety of our private deck area. It also allows direct line of sight into our house through our rear double glass doors and the kitchen and dining area windows to the north. The vertical view boundaries, which are shown in drawing TP18, clearly demonstrate that the proposed screening affords no protection from overlooking our private property at all. The screened sight line extending from the kitchen window is shown as falling well below 0.5 metres above ground level at the distance of the centre of our rear deck. There would be a clear line of sight of our entire deck and through our rear glass doors from that window. These two diagrams clearly confirm that our private backyard, our deck area and the back glass doors would be directly visible from within the dwelling. Other neighbours are similarly affected by a loss of privacy from the overlooking second-storey windows. The applicant has noted that there are several two-storey dwellings within the local area, and this application follows that precedent. However, all of the two-storey dwellings that I have observed in the area are in the front of or facing the front of their blocks and are designed to prevent overlooking of neighbouring backyards.
Mr. Keatley, you've just done 3 minutes. So have you got far to go?
If I might just add one, my last sentence in summary.
Okay.
In summary, I would submit that it's a very poor location for a second-storey dwelling. The screening which attempts to address the problem of overlooking neighbouring properties will make it a very strange-looking building, and these attempts nevertheless fail to protect the privacy of our properties. So
thank you, Mr. Keatley. Thanks, Mr. Keatley. Councillors, have you got any questions for Mr. Keatley? There no questions, Mr. Keatley? There is a question. Councillor Holcomb.
Sorry, Mr. Keatley, where are you relative to the house?
I'm sorry, where
do you live relative to the building?
Oh, we live next door on the south side.
On the south side.
34 Chenery Street.
Sorry.
So the building, the second story is right over our side fence and side and back fence.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Tehan has a question.
Yeah, just Mr. Keatley, you're at number 34 Chenery Street. So did I hear correctly that you're concerned with the view into your backyard, not into your house? Because from the look of the diagrams that I can see, there's obviously a very large tree at the back of your house, which would obscure the view from the proposed residence into your house, but more into your backyard.
The tree does obscure some of the view, but the if you have, well, I believe you all have access to the drawings. I think it's TP 16 quite clearly shows the lateral view from that kitchen window, and that is not take into account the tree. It claims to stop short of the tree and clearly demonstrates that the entirety of our back deck is visible from that window. That's aside from the fact that that tree is not an evergreen; it's deciduous, so it's essentially see-through for 6 months of the year anyway.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Keatley, and I'm speaking theoretically here, if the balcony was reversed, so it wasn't facing east, it was facing west, how does that impact you?
Well, our primary concern is the fact that people who are in that second story will be able to see straight into our private backyard. So whatever solution prevents people seeing into our backyard is something that I would almost demand if I can.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get it. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Okay, in that case, thank you, Mr. Keatley, for coming in. And we have one more deputation tonight.
Thank you.
So thank you. Welcome to watch. Yeah, keep watching. The final deputation is by Mr. Duncan Taylor, I believe the architect. Mr. Taylor, are you able to join us, please?
Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Taylor. I'm Steve Raby, the mayor, and you'll have 3 minutes for your deputation, and then you may have questions after that.
Okay, so I haven't prepared a 3-minute speech as such. Having spoken to the planner this afternoon, Nicole, I've offered my time simply to answer any questions that the councillors may have. What I will clear up, though, is there are no shared laundry facilities. There is a separate laundry to the proposed second-storey dwelling and a separate laundry which is in conjunction with the kitchen to the studio apartment downstairs. So there's no shared facilities, just to clear that up. With regards to the screening of the windows and the matter raised by, I forget the gentleman's name just prior, the screening, yes, that's a compromise, and that came about prior to the meeting in October with the objectors to try to appease their concerns, because the overlooking the windows as they are located and the balcony as it is located is already compliant with overlooking. So to appease them, the concerns further, we proposed we could screen them, and that was in consultation with Nicole, that we could screen them further, and the diagrams that are provided by 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20 actually show the areas that until you get to a height, the average height of a person, 1.8 metres, gives a clear distance of 14 metres as opposed to 9 metres of a non-visible area. So yes, I ideally don't like screening windows. They were compliant, but the screens were simply put in place to try to appease the concerns. I can only say that I don't believe there's any appeasing of the concerns unless it becomes a single-storey dwelling. That's all I've got to say. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the councillor may have.
Yeah. Well, we'll open it up to councillor questions then. Thanks, Mr. Taylor. Has any councillors got any questions for Mr. Taylor? Councillor Holcomb.
Mr. Taylor, can you tell me why you think that fits into the feel of the community? Why that design does?
Well, it's a good question to ask, because it's like any development. What fits in? Everything progresses. We started with horse and carts. We're in motorised vehicles. Now we're in battery vehicles. So everything progresses, as does townships. My thoughts are with Mansfield. I'm not a resident. I do have family that live up in Mansfield. The consolidation of land that provides that opportunity is far better in my eyes than spreading that township, because once a township becomes a city, the appeal gets lost. And you know, I follow the instruction of the brief of the client. So if I can cover all the regulatory requirements, then I present the design to the client. Ultimately, it's their decision as to what they wish to build. I may not be in agreement with it, but they're the client, they're paying my bills. So, and I understand and appreciate the concerns of the neighbours, you know, but progress is progress in development. There has to be the first person that does one thing and then it leads on. It's interesting that I believe one of the objectors, they developed their land with 2 dwellings to make a disabled friendly dwelling at the rear of an existing dwelling in Hunter Street. And that's development now. Back when that was done, there was probably neighbours were unhappy that they were going to lose their quarter-acre block because there's a second dwelling now sitting at the rear. The proposed 3 dwellings, that changes again the feel of the neighbourhood. So we go from single residences on a single block of land to now we've got 3 dwellings, 4 dwellings. So this proposal, I don't believe, is any different. Visually, it's different because it's double story.
Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Sladen.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Taylor, thank you for coming along tonight. I just want to go back to the overlooking, and I perfectly understand that your initial application did comply with the overlooking as per the planning scheme. But your decision to put in the extra screens, and I might have to refer to Ms. Embling on this one. That is a decision that you made, you are saying, prior to the consultative meeting on the 9th of October. Is that correct?
That's correct. That was in response to Nicole providing the responses or replies from the objectors. So in discussion, it was, can we do something that would provide further screening, overlooking, to decrease the amount of overlooking. As it was, that overlooking was compliant. What we've done is put the screens in place. So it wasn't a direct response to the objectors meeting in October. It was prior to that, and those drawings were provided to the objectors.
At the October meeting?
Yes, they were.
Okay. And you are committed to that?
It certainly can be placed as a condition on the permit.
Yeah, that's why I need to consult with Ms. Embley whether that, because I've looked at the conditions and I don't think I can see that as part of the condition.
There is, sorry to interrupt, but there is also an alternative for the kitchen window, that it would be louvered. So to be louvered its whole height and size.
Yes, yep, no, I see that.
Look up. So there is no overlooking potential from the kitchen.
Okay, yep, well, I'll get that. Now, were you aware of an on-site meeting yesterday? Were you advised of that on-site meeting?
I was, yes.
And did you attend?
No.
Did your client attend?
No, both of us were down in Melbourne.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Any other questions for Mr. Taylor? Councillor Holcomb.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Taylor, at the on-site meeting yesterday, one of the things that, a number of things weren't clarified for me, but one of them was the open space. And the open space is very limited on that site as it is. But my understanding is that there's been a number of changes made to the plan. So the open space, can you tell me what the figure you understand the open space to be?
When you sort of talk about open space, there's different terminologies of open space. There's private open space, and then there's there's private open space, and then there's secure private open space. And the design is compliant with both those regulatory requirements. So when you have a first floor dwelling, the private open space is that balcony, and that is compliant to both that, and it's also got some yard space on the ground level. The studio apartment also has its ground level private open space, as does the existing dwelling, and the front yard is private open space, but it's not considered secluded private open space because it's overlooked when people walk past the front. But everything is compliant, as is the garden areas. So
I think I'd like to discuss that further, because that's certainly not the opinion we got, or certainly not what I was hearing yesterday. I was totally confused about the whole thing. Might be a better way to put it.
So what further would you like?
No, you've told me as much as.
Yeah, so the areas are broken down, essentially, And I believe if I quickly jump on my computer here, I've got it broken down into what the physical areas are. So dwelling 1 has a secluded private open space area of 35 square metres, and the private open space to the front yard is 34.6. The total achieved is 70 square metres. Dwelling 2 has a total area achieved of 53.7 square metres, and dwelling 3 has an area of approximately 46 square metres, and all of those are compliant. The minimum private open space that is required to each is 40 square metres, of which 25 square metres needs to be secluded. And we meet all those requirements, as we do meet the requirements of the width of that area as well. So there's a formula that we must meet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Thanks very much, Mr. Taylor, for coming in and giving us a deputation tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, have you got any questions for Ms. Embling on this agenda item? Councillor Sladden.
Ms. Embling, where are you? I can't see you. Oh, there you are.
I am here.
Thank you. No. I had to flick across my screen. Thank you very much. Okay, a couple of basic ones first. Does the application fall within the zoning of the affected land?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The application is for 3 dwellings on a lot in the general residential zone. Dwellings in the general residential zone are a Section 1 use, meaning the use does not require a planning permit. We're only dealing with the buildings and works.
Okay, thank you. The second question is in relation to the screening that Mr. Taylor referred to on the balconies and the windows. Forgive me, but I can't see that as a condition of the recommendation that you put forward.
For you, Mr. Mayor. So there is a standard condition, I believe it's condition 2, that says all buildings and works must be in accordance with the endorsed plans.
Endorsed plans, right.
So if this proposal was granted a permit, the full set of plans as provided in tonight's agenda would be endorsed, and they would be required to comply with all of the plans as attached.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Embling, the issue of the open space. What I think how I understood, there's a big gap there for me in terms of what is the actual open space based on what we were told yesterday and what we just heard. Can you give some clarification of that?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with the conversation that was had on site yesterday with some of the objector parties. Was it relating to garden area, which is different, as Mr. Taylor explained, to private open space. So garden area, as it applies, requires 35% of the land to be available effectively so that you could grow things. That may be under a fairly sheltered balcony. There are limitations to that, which Mr. Taylor, I did believe, read out as part of his deputation, but I'll just quickly go through it. So a garden area, any area on a lot with a minimum dimension of 1 metre wide, does not include a dwelling or residential building. However, areas attached to dwellings that can be considered are the eaves up to 600 mils wide. So on the plans shown, the garden area under those eaves can be counted. What else? The other relevant parts are unroofed terraces and decks. So the back deck proposed for the existing dwelling is not proposed to have a roof over it, so it can count as garden area in this instance. And then the other relevant one is any outbuilding that does not exceed 10 square meters. So the application does require 6 cubic meters of storage per house proposed. Those can be seen on the amended plans in the attached in the attachment. So there are 6 cubic meters of storage for each house. Because each of those small storage areas are less than 10 square meters in footprint, they also count as garden area for the purpose of storing your garden equipment, your little mower, etc. The other areas that can't be counted are a driveway and any areas set aside for car parking. So what is left in this proposal that does qualify for garden area is 341 square meters for the whole property. Based on the total area of the land being 974 square meters, they do come at just over 35% meeting the requirements of the planning scheme. Would you like me to go through the public open space? Because that is different again.
Yeah, please.
So private open space, not public open space. As Mr. Taylor explained, you've got 2 levels: secluded private open space and private open space. So your secluded does mean that it's not viewable from adjoining land or the public realm. So being that the front deck on the existing dwelling couldn't be considered secluded private open space because it can be seen from the public realm. So to just skip through it a little bit. So in the plans and the attachment, dwelling number 1 has been labelled, which is the existing house, does provide for a total of 64.5 square meters approximately of private open space. And within that includes secluded private open space, which does meet all of the requirements. Dwelling number 2 is the studio, as noted, being the ground level dwelling of the rear building proposed. Proposes just over 50 square meters in private and secluded open space. So again, complying, they've got well over the 40 square meters that's required. And then dwelling number 3 is the second story, which includes a 13.3 square meter balcony, which far exceeds the 8 square meter balcony requirement size. Plus there is 27.6 square meters on the ground on the north and eastern side of that building, which is allocated for that top level. So they actually have a total of 40.9 square meters of private open space for the upper story dwelling, which does far exceed because their requirements are much less when they do include a balcony per se. So overall, they have satisfied the planning scheme requirements for secluded and private open space and garden area.
So where was the confusion yesterday?
I believe, through you, Mr. Mayor, that the confusion yesterday was in relation to the garden area requirements, whether or not that could include the areas under the eaves of the proposed and existing building, and whether it could include the storage areas, so the 6 cubic meters storage area. I can confirm that the planning scheme does allow those areas to be included, specifically where the eaves are no more than 600 millimeters in width.
So from an open space area, in your view, it does meet the requirements.
That's correct.
Right.
Any more questions, councillors? Councillor Tehan.
Yeah, just Miss Emily, just the one in regards to the common laundry. We heard Mr. Taylor talk about the fact that there isn't a common laundry downstairs. Now, I was led to believe as of yesterday that there was a common laundry. So has that changed just recently, or is it, what's your view on that?
Mr. Mayor, the plans that detail the laundry being within the stairwell have not changed. That has been consistent throughout all of the plans. The plans don't specifically annotate a second laundry in that 2-storey building. However, I'd note that it's not a requirement of the planning scheme definition for a dwelling to include a laundry. So whether or not there is a shared laundry or whether there is one per dwelling is not a requirement of the planning scheme.
Really, a 4-bedroom residence doesn't have to have a laundry.
That is correct.
As such.
Yes.
Through you, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, I might just clarify that it doesn't have to have a separate laundry. Obviously, any dwelling will have to provide for washing of clothes, but it no longer has to be a separate room that they do it in. So they don't make it so the building regulations and the planning regulations changed quite a while ago because it was to try and encourage people to utilise the internal space better. So you see a lot of bathrooms with a washing machine, or you might have a European laundry where it's just in a cupboard, things like that. That's why they took that specific requirement for a separate laundry room out.
Okay. Just one other thing, just in regards to the balcony at the rear, Miss Embling, that balcony, it makes up part of the open space of that dwelling, does it? Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what else can make up the open space of that particular dwelling? The type of open space that we're talking about, the balcony.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to provide an example, if what is now proposed to be a balcony was changed to be an extended living area and was internal, so there was no balcony proposed on the second floor, additional private and secluded open space would need to be provided on the ground. Currently, that dwelling only has access to the north and part of the east side of the building. And at the moment, that space alone would not satisfy, the 40 square metre, which is a mandatory requirement of the planning scheme. It's not something that can be reduced or waived.
No, thank you.
Councillors, Councillor Sladen.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I really don't want to prolong this much longer, but Ms. Embling, please excuse my ignorance, but could you please explain Transport Zone 2 and its relative impacts upon this proposal?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the Transport Zone 2 is now what used to be known as the Road Zone Category 1. Effectively, the requirements of that have not changed, just the name. Effectively, what that means is that it is now just the means of being a Vic Roads or Department of Transport referral. So it's not a council managed road. As such, there was a referral done to Department of Transport as part of the planning application process, and they have provided conditional consent, and the conditions are in the recommended officer recommendation.
Yep, thank you. So they are a determining authority as opposed to just a referral authority.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, and they've determined that it's all okay subject to the conditions.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. Emily.
Any other
No further questions, Mr. Mayor?
No more questions. Thank you, Councillor Sladen. Any Councillor Holcomb?
Yeah, one more, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Ms. Emily, it's been mentioned a number of times by the objectors, and with respect to use of this facility as an Airbnb, can you just tell me again why that can't be used as an Airbnb, and can that be changed?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. The proposal as it is currently is to have 3 residential dwellings on the block. Any proposal to use any of those 3 dwellings, if they were permitted, for an Airbnb or similar type of accommodation, would require an additional planning permit for what we call group accommodation, effectively meaning where there is more than one dwelling on a lot that is used for short-term stay. Similarly, any other type of accommodation proposal that is not a standard single dwelling would require further permissions. For example, a rooming house where each room in a house can be rented out separately would also require further planning permissions.
So what would stop, 6 months later, them coming to the planning department asking for a change in the planning permit?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we couldn't stop that happening at all. Any person is within their rights to apply for a planning permit within the realms of the planning scheme at any given time. Such an application would need to go through the standard planning permit process again, and likely outcome would result in similar advertising to this application, whereby all of the adjoining and additional residents in the nearby area were notified and had an opportunity to raise their concerns.
So it can be changed. That can be changed. There's no assurances on that for any length of time.
That is correct, but it does stand to exactly the same rules as every other multi-dwelling on any of the residences in Mansfield.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillors, there's a resolution before you. Have I got a motion? Councillor Slatton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move the recommendation as outlined by the responsible officer on pages 16 to 19 inclusive.
Okay, we have a motion for Councillor Slatton for 16 to 18. Have I got a seconder for the motion? Councillors, no seconder. A second of Councillor Tehan. Councillor Slatton, would you like to talk to the motion?
Only briefly, Mr. Mayor. Clearly, it's caused concern amongst the residents, but it does satisfy, according to the officer's report, all the conditions under the Mansfield planning scheme. I believe that the proponent has made concessions to alleviate, maybe not solve, but alleviate some of the objections. It is a use, I believe, a good use of a block of land or an existing block of land, as opposed to approving more sprawl, larger subdivisions within the Shire. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Slatton. Councillor Tehan, would you like to speak to the motion at all?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I don't like the proposal much, but it fits in all the criteria of the planning scheme. There's not much we can do about it. I hope that the developer and the architect go back before they submit their building plans, that they take into consideration the objectors, some of their concerns around privacy, and try and work with them further. But unfortunately, some of these modern developments, and this one stands out like the proverbial. I don't think it's ideal, but it's what our planning scheme allows, and so therefore that's why I'm seconding the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Tehan. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Holcomb.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I understand the planning side of it. I think where I have a disagreement with it is I do not think it fits into the character of the of Mansfield. I think a big black box, elevated. From a design point of view, I don't like it. It's a personal decision, but I also just don't think it fits in with that that environment that it's there now. I'm concerned about the protection for Airbnb. There's been history with this site and this owner with Airbnb over the last few years. I'm not convinced that that's going to. I'm not convinced that's going to be not a problem going down the track. And my other concern that I think has been answered was about the open space. I just, my overall thing is I just don't think it enhances our town at all, particularly as we as a council have stood against anything that's been inconsistent with protecting their natural surrounds, the character of the Shire, or importantly respecting the residents' interests. And clearly the residents' interests aren't being supported here. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Okay, I have the motion for us, and we have to vote on that motion. So, all in favour? And against? The motion is carried.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but don't you have to vote on the motion?
Yes.
Do I?
Yeah.
Is that because Councillor Webb's not here?
Doesn't matter. You're supposed to vote regardless.
Oh, I'm a new mayor.
That's all right.
Okay, well, I'll ask for the vote again. All those in favour of the motion? Vote is carried. Thanks very much, Ms. Embling, coming along tonight. I see that you will be staying with us for 13.2.2, which is a statutory planning services review annual update. And I should say, while we're online, to the people that did turn up to speak to that, thank you very much for taking an interest in Mansfield. Sorry, 13.2.2 statutory planning services review, the annual update. The responsible officer is Nicole Embling.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Sorry. Given that we started late and we're at this stage now, is it possible for a 5-minute break for a bathroom stop?
I'll be benevolent, councillor, and give you 5 minutes. So I'll see you back here at 6:50.
Thank you very much. Move this along.
Hey,
we need to move this along.
Yeah. If you need to,
Sorry,
it's all right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you'll need a vote just to adjourn the meeting for a short time.
Okay.
All right, don't worry about it. I'll retract that. Keep going.
Right, back to 13.2.2, Nicole, Ms. Embling. Councillors, have you got any questions? No questions?
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, more a comment. It's more a comment than a question. It's just when you start looking at the, and Ms. Emily, this is in your area, so when you start looking at the progress to date on the actions, and particularly the point 1, and you sort of forget about everything that's been done over the last couple of years here, and that's an impressive body of work. So well done.
Councillor Sladen.
Yeah, look, I endorse Councillor Holcomb's comments. Councillors, you will recall when we came into this current term, of council. At the conclusion of the previous council, a motion and process was put in place to do a complete review of the planning department, given the shortcomings of the planning department. And I really do want to congratulate the CEO, Ms. Crane, and Ms. Embling and her co-planners. I know it's stat planning we're talking about, but Mr. Yankin in strat planning as well. Forgive me, Claire, and anybody else I've forgotten in the planning department. But, you know, the work that you have done and undertaken since that review commenced is outstanding. So I really do take my hat off to you and thank you for all the work that you've done to improve the planning process, not only the planning process, but your relationship with developers, proponents, and the public in general. So thank you very much.
Any other questions, councillors? And in that case, we have a recommendation in front of you. Councillor Teahan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that council receive and note the statutory planning services review progress update.
Thank you. Seconder for that motion, Councillor Holcomb. Anyone would like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I could just say something. I think about this time, about 5 years ago, there was a planning meeting in the Shire, and I knew quite a few people who went along, and they were bored at what had been going on in the planning department in Mansfield. So that was the outcome of that was these reports and going forward. So I think it's been a huge turnaround from 5 years ago, and I do congratulate Miss Crane and all her staff on what they've done and what they're able to do. So I look forward to continuing like that.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion?
I think I've said my bit.
Over and above what you've already said, yeah. I'd also, before we go to vote, like to say that I endorse all councillors' comments. So well done, everybody. Right, the motion's before you, so we'll take a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 13.2.3 is the Mansfield Little Athletics Association licence agreement. The planning responsible officer is Ms. Maya Belvanova. Good evening, Maya, and thank you, Ms. Belvanova, for coming in tonight. I see we did have a deputation, but now we don't. That's probably made it a lot easier and quicker for us. Has any councillors got any questions from Ms. Belvanova? In that case, there is a recommendation put before you. Can I have a proposal? Thank you. Councillor Teahan. Seconder, Councillor Holcomb. Would anyone like to speak to the motion?
Would you like me to read it out, Councillor Mayor Raby?
Yeah, I would. Oh, sorry. Getting me confused now. Councillor Sladen.
Okay, given that we've got a mover and a seconder, I think we can talk about it now, Mr. Mayor. Look, I have real concerns about what I've witnessed over the past 4 years, well, the past 3 years, when it comes to the leasing and licensing of council property to community groups. Now, I know that we have reviewed, we've revised, we have adopted a leasing and licensing policy. Initially, I thought, yep, that works. We do need to have some contribution back from the users of council facilities. However, what I have observed over those 3 years is the inequity that has occurred between various groups getting charged anywhere between $82,500 per year for a council facility, down to $1 per year for a council facility, with no question of CPI increases, no contribution to outgoings, etc. And all of these are not-for-profit, community-based organisations that provide a huge contribution to the Mansfield community. Now, this council has had a very, very strong and worthy focus on infrastructure. Infrastructure is not just building a ring road or building a bridge or sealing roads or gravelling roads. Infrastructure is community infrastructure as well. And I have seen the deterioration of the community development area of Mansfield Council over the past 3 years. And these type of leases and licenses that have been introduced, I see as deteriorating the fabric of the community. We're about to, later in this meeting, have a look at pass our annual report, which shows a $3.9 million surplus. We have done a recent land sale of $1.5 million. We need to reinvest some of that back into the community. Yes, again, in this council meeting tonight, well, in the confidential part of it, we will look at recommending the outlying communities infrastructure fund. And yes, we will approve $75,000 there. But within that, there's a lot of community groups that are going to not be successful in receiving that money. So I now, the next item on the agenda is the Delatite Cricket Club. So whether it's a cricket club, whether it's a football club, whether it's a neighbourhood house, whether it's a community group, whether it's the Potters who only do it for $1, whether it's, the Friends of the Library, we need some equity here. And that's why I will support this motion, but I would like to add to it that council review its leasing and licensing policy as soon as it can in 2024.
So, Councillor Sladen, thanks very much for that. But are you proposing an alternate motion by that last comment that you had? Or?
It's an amendment to the existing motion, to the standing motion, and that is to add a last point that council review its leasing and licensing policy.
Well, we vote on this motion first, and if it doesn't get up, then you propose an alternative motion. I think isn't that the way we proceed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Sladen can move an amendment to the motion. So need to seek a seconder for that.
Yep, we've already got a motion before us. Councillor Tehan has moved it. Councillor Holcomb has seconded it.
And I've made an amendment to it. So you need to go back and see if you can get a seconder for the amendment.
That's correct. Or you could seek agreement from the original mover and seconder to to alter their motion if you can do it by agreement.
Okay, councillors, over to you. Councillor Holcomb has put, Sladen has put an amendment to the motion. Are you moving the motion as stated or an amendment?
An amendment. I'm asking Councillor Tehan to add the council will review the leasing and licensing policy early in 2024.
I just can't see that it's appropriate to do it when we're discussing the Mansfield Little Athletics licence. So no,
Yep.
I'm happy to stick with my motion that I put here. Yeah.
Thank you,
And I'll
Councillor
vote on that.
Teague. Councillor Holcomb, are you?
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate either, to be honest. No,
Okay.
I don't
So
support
get a mover and a seconder. I'll put the motion to a vote.
And sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. If Councillor Sladen is wanting to move it as an amendment, you need to seek is there a seconder for his amendment? And if there isn't, it'll fail through lapse of a seconder. And it goes, and that then reverts back to Councillor Tian's original motion.
Right, I've missed something here with governance, obviously. I got it round the wrong way. So, okay, I will ask for a seconder for Councillor Sladen's amendment. Have we got a seconder for Councillor Sladen's amendment? In that case, the amendment is lapsed, and we go through with the first recommendation. We'll vote on that. All those in favour of that recommendation? That recommendation, as stated on page 29 of 53, is passed.
Can I just, sorry, didn't get a chance to speak to the motion in all the goings on. I really do admire and appreciate the work that Mansfield Little Athletics has done. I'm glad we've come to an agreement with them. And as Councillor Sladen said, and I've got no objections to looking at our leasing and licensing policy down the track. This is not the time or place to be putting it into a little athletics motion. These guys deserve to have a good agreement with council which secures their future, which they've never had ever since they started. And I was a little aths kid, and that's going back a fair way. So they've never had any security. Now they have, and I think it's a great thing. So thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and thanks, Councillor Teague, recognising that I should have asked you to read that motion out. We will move on now and get back on track. So item 13.2.4, the Delatite Cricket Club licence. The responsible officer is Manager Planning and Environment, Ms. Maya Belvanova. And we do have a deputation tonight by Mr. David Foster, who may be in the room. So, welcome, Mr. Foster, to our regular meeting of December 2023. You'd like to give a deputation to council, and in so doing, you have 3 minutes to do so. You can start whenever you like. Thank you, Kelsey. Welcome to the regular December meeting of Mansfield Shire Council. I'd like to apologise. We have had some. Mr. Foster, you'll have to, whatever device you're watching on, turn that off and join our meeting.
Okay, I'm on.
You are on now, and I'll reset the clock. You don't know whether you heard welcome. You have a deputation to give to us. We'll give you 3 minutes to do so. There may be questions by councillors after that. So it's over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and evening, councillors. You've got a recommendation in front of you from council officers at Delatite Cricket Club. Take out a lease for Lords and Mansfield Rec Reserve. It's a lease of 1 year at $921.86 plus GST. So it's taken a fair while to reach that point. And it was because we felt that under the property leasing and licensing policy, we were being overcharged significantly, and we think that probably other sporting clubs are being overcharged in a similar way, ones who already have licence or lease agreements. I'm wondering, councillors, if you saw the spreadsheet of Delatide Cricket Club inputs into the Lords Reserve. These, I'm assuming that you have. And it was quite a detailed document. It dates from the club's inception in 1985. And the amounts that the club has put into Lords are really, really significant. Really significant. We divided them into general improvements to the Lords Oval and also cricket-specific improvements. And the general improvements over those 39 years amounted to some $141,000, and the cricket-specific improvements amounted to approximately $108,000. So it's a total of $250,000 over 39 years, nearly 4 decades. So it's a bit over $6,000 a year. That is a really significant investment, but the policy, the property leasing and licensing policy, doesn't give any recognition for that sort of input from a club. And I think it's pretty unprecedented in Mansfield terms, the amount of money we've put into the venues where we play at, in particular the Lords Reserve. So when you say that you'd like to review the policy, I think it's really worth reviewing, because I don't think it's intended that clubs that have put in so much and are run by volunteers should have to pay really significant amounts. Like we were going to have to pay initially $3,000 a year, including GST, until the latest negotiations with council officers. So, yeah, we think the policy has some unintended consequences for sporting clubs and recreation clubs in general that are volunteer run and very important to our community. The other thing that I put...
Excuse me, Mr. Foster, that's 3 minutes. We've had 8 deputations tonight, so I'm not going to make any exceptions for you. It's 3 minutes per deputation. Thanks very much.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillors, have you got any questions for Mr. Foster? No questions from councillors, Mr. Foster. So thank you very much for coming in and giving us your deputation tonight.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Chelsea, if you can take Mr. Foster back to the waiting room, please. Sorry. Thank you. The responsible officers, Mayor Ms. Belvanova, have councillors got any questions on this subject? And if there's no questions, we have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Holcomb.
Yes, I move that recommendation on page 33, starting with the point 1, endorses a proposal to enter into a licence agreement for the Lords Ground Reserve and Mansfield Rec Reserve with the Delatide Cricket Club for a period of 1 year, with 1 year further term of 1 year, with commencement date from October 1, 2023, and it's followed by points 2, 3 and 4 as designated.
Understood. Seconder, Councillor Tehan. Would any councillor like to speak? Councillor Holcomb, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I acknowledge the work that's been done by the Delatide Cricket Club, and they're not alone. There's other groups around in our community who've done some amazing work as well. My only comment would be we're trying to juggle ratepayers' money as most efficiently and as effectively as possible. And there's some groups who aren't even based in Mansfield who we support. We're based in Mansfield, but the activities might be elsewhere. We're trying to fund outlying funds, etc., etc. So it's a difficult balancing act. But the overall, certainly, just speaking from my perspective, is that we've really done our best to look after ratepayers' money and make this council a solvent council, taking into account as many community interests as best as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Teen, you second the motion. Do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm glad we've arrived at a finishing point. There's obviously, some good debate, and as I said to, I think it was Councillor Sladden, the last agenda item, it probably is something that we do need to look at, but it's a great thing in that it gives the Delatite Cricket Club certainty as where they are. So they've never had a policy before, so they have no security, but it gives them that. So I think that's something that we're achieved. Yet there might have been some potholes and pitfalls on the way, but the Delatite Cricket Club are a great club. Enjoyed playing against them over many years. They provide great facilities. They do. They've got a fantastic turf wicket, and hopefully that we can get a grant in the near future where we can actually build them a decent pavilion, a bit like what we had down at Merton, which was built by the club themselves. So, but that would be fantastic to be able to do that. And look forward to many, many years of Delatite playing at the Lord's Ground.
Thank you, Councillor Teen. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just following on from Councillor Teen, I'm sure he recalls that it was Apex and the Delatite Cricket Club that built the existing pavilion at the Lord's Oval. These people are ratepayers. They're not out of towners. They're not making a huge dollar. I've never paid to go to see a match at the Lord's Oval for the Delatite Cricket Club. They're not getting entry fees. Look, I'll just reiterate or repeat what I said before. It needs to have another look. We need to have another look, because these are mums, dads, their kids, they're part of the community. The mental health benefits that the programs that they provide far outweigh, $900 a year, for heaven's sake. I mean, really.
We'll keep it.
Leave it at that.
On track. Thank you, Councillor Sladden. We have to vote on that. So all those in favour for that recommendation. The motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Balbanova. Good night. Item 13.2.5, the amendment C55 Mansfield Red Gum Drive, Mansfield, and the responsible officer is Strategic Planning Officer, Oscar Yenkin.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Oscar's not joining us tonight. He had an engagement with the Minister for Planning. So
right.
Yep. So you're with me,
Oscar.
That's well done, Oscar. Yeah, on the way up. Okay, Ms. Crane, you can take the questions for this agenda item. Any councillor has any questions for Ms. Crane over this? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, how I'm reading it, we've had where we are now, we've got no objections at all to this plan. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So through you, Mr. Mayor, there was some objections that were lodged to it. Oscar worked really, really hard with the objectors to try and address their concerns. Some of their concerns weren't in relation to this amendment per se, but a broader planning issues that had happened in the past, and he was able to satisfy their concerns to the point they withdrew their objections.
Well, that's a great result to get where Oscar and the team have got to. Is a terrific result. So well done.
Thank you. I'll let him know.
There is any other questions, councillors, There's a recommendation before you. We've got a motion. Councillor Sladen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the recommendation as per, sorry, I'll find the right page.
39.
Thank you. As there on page 39 through to page 39 is the recommendation I put forward. Thank you.
Okay, so that's point 1, 2, 3, 4 as written on page 39 of the agenda. Have we got a seconder to the motion? Councillor Holcomb. And would any councillor, Councillor Sladen, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, just once again, congratulations to our strategic planner, Mr. Yenkin, for his work on this. Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, nothing I can add. Right.
Any other councillor? In that case, the motion is put before the vote. All those in favour of the motion? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 13.3.1 out. Oh, where have I got to here? Am I right there? I've lost my spot.
13.3.
13.3.1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Community and Corporate Services Directorate, outlaying Community Infrastructure Fund. And the coordinator, responsible officer is Ms. Berghofer. I can see her coming into the meeting now. Ms. Berghofer, you are clear to enter. Chelsea, behind the scenes there, could you ask Ms. Berghofer?
Just working on it right now. I'm just
Thank
messaging
you.
with her.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps we might make a start and hopefully she'll join us along the way, just in the interest of time.
Yeah, well, you can take over then, Madam CEO. Thank you very much. Councillors, have you got any questions on this agenda item tonight? No questions.
Just a comment that it's a beautiful looking document, and congratulations to those who produced it. As we understand, it was done in-house, so saving ratepayers money. So thanks to those.
What are you talking about? What? You're talking about the outline?
I'm on the annual report.
No,
sorry.
Outline community.
Out of order, sorry. Mr.
Yeah, outlying community. Have you got any questions of the outlying community fund?
No.
And I don't hear any questions, so we do have a recommendation put before us. Anyone like to propose this? And Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. For the recommendation on page 45 of the agenda, which has as its first point, the council receives the assessment panel recommendations for the outline community infrastructure fund 23-24, and is followed by point 2.
Yeah, roger that. So 1, 2 endorsements down to G as printed on page 45. Can I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Sladen. Councillor Holcomb, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, only that it's extremely encouraging to see 25 community groups responding, which may be a record number. Certainly since we've been in council, that's the largest number of responses that we've had. And from such a diversity of organisations as well, which I think is terrific. And I just like to acknowledge the work that went into working through the proposals and to come up with the community groups that have been successful in receiving funding, which I'm sure will go to good use, and be very interesting to see the results of this as we move through the rest of the year.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Sladen, would you like to speak to it?
Just endorse Councillor Holcomb's comments. Yeah, similarly, great to see such a large application from a wide range of community groups in the outlying areas, and great to see Matlock put in a application, which I think is the first time I've seen Matlock put in such an application. So that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is any other councillor like to speak to or against the motion? And in that case, the motion's put before you for a vote. All those in favour of the motion, raise your hand. Thank you. The motion is carried. Thanks. 13.3.2 is the conflict of interest policy, and the responsible officer is the interim coordinator governance and risk, Jane Carter. I assume that the Madam CEO will be taking over from Jane tonight, and you'll be the responsible officer for this.
Jane was just coming in. She'd logged in and it kicked her out. So we're just quickly popping to her computer to get her back in.
Can't win tonight, can we?
Apparently not.
No.
I think in the interests of time, keep moving while we do that. Just
if you're happy to take that on, that role, Madam CEO, that would be great. So any councillors have any questions for this agenda item? In that case, there is a...
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Slater.
Madam CEO, there's no procedure attached to this policy.
That's correct, Councillor Sladen. It is a new policy, so there are already existing procedural, I guess you could say, elements in our both in our induction program and also in our governance rules as well. So there was an existing form, but there wasn't an existing procedure other than what existed in those two existing documents. So yeah, it's basically it's filling a gap in that we didn't actually have a policy. We had more procedural elements in place already.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Is there any other questions? In that case, we have a recommendation put before us. Councillor Holcomb.
Mr. Mayor, the council endorses the new conflict of interest policy.
Thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Tehan. Anyone would like to speak to the motion? No? In that case, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Motion carried. Thanks very much. Item 13.3.3 is the annual report. The responsible officer is me. And I won't be taking any questions because thanks very much. The annual report has been put before you. As a new mayor, I didn't have a lot to do with this annual report. I thank the CEO and Councillor James Tehan for all the work that you've done with this. It's a great report, and it's very clear, concise, and easy to read. I don't really have a lot to say about that. Has any councillors got any questions about the report? Councillor Holcomb.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. The cost of the report. Madam CEO, can you tell us what it cost to produce the report this year?
It was
leaving out labour costs.
Yeah, I was going to through you, Mr. Mayor. Other than labour costs, there was no cost. And it was existing staff resources that were used.
That's a great use of ratepayers' money. And so, yeah, they'll now be put to something else as well. Well done.
Yeah. Any other questions, councillors?
Yeah, I preempted my comments earlier, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and we do have a recommendation before us. Councillor Tehan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've moved the recommendation that Council, in accordance with Section 100 of the Local Government Act 2020, receives and notes the annual report 2022-23 as presented, and 2, delegates to the CEO the authority to correct any errors, including typographical, in the operations report do not materially alter the underlying message of the report.
Thanks, Councillor Tehan. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Tehan, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's been a long time coming. We finally got over the line, thanks to Fargo for all their meticulous dotting and crossing of I's and T's, which, you know, they've been through it with a fine-tooth comb, so it's all good, I hope. And yeah, as Councillor Holcomb mentioned before, no great big glossy coffee table books printed, so which I think is fantastic, because I think that was an incredibly big waste of ratepayers' money. So yep, that's all.
Thanks, Councillor Tehan. Any other councillors would like to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And the motion is carried. Item 14, Council Meeting Resolution Action Status Report, which is quite vanilla. Any questions, councillors? In that case, we have a recommendation. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Council received and note that Mansfield Shire Council Meeting Resolution Action Status registered as at 6th of December 2023.
Thank you. Have we got a seconder to the motion? Councillor Sladden. Anyone would like to speak to or against the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? And the motion is carried. Item 15, Advisory and Special Committee Reports. 15.1, Audit and Risk Committee Meeting Agenda and Minutes. Are there any questions, councillors? And we do have a recommendation put before us. We've got a Councillor Holcomb.
Mayor, the council received the agenda minutes to the Mansfield Shire Audit Risk Committee meeting held 27th of December 2023.
And a seconder to that motion, please. Councillor Tehan. Anyone would like to speak to or against the motion? In that case, we will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you. Authorisation of sealing of documents. We do not have anything there, and it brings us to item 17, closure of meeting to members of public. That's so that we can go to a special meeting. Councillor Tehan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council closed the meeting to the members of the public under section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider confidential reports in accordance with section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 for reasons set out below.
Thank you. Councillor Sladen is seconding the motion. And all those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. So we will close this meeting, go to our special meeting, and we will be back after that. Thank you. You're still watching. And we're back on with the meeting. Good evening, everybody. We're back from our confidential meeting. What was resolved in there that we we will announce the recipients of the Citizen Awards on Australia Day on January the 26th in the Botanic Park. So we're all looking forward to that. I'd like to thank everyone tonight for coming and watching the meeting. I'm sorry that we've had some technical difficulties during the meeting, but that's life in this new age. I'd like to thank all the council officers for your time, and councillors, thank you for coming in and wishing you best for the evening ahead. And good night, everyone in the Shire.
Good night.
Good night.
Live's finished now.
Oh,
Thank you.